Well, hello, my friends. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky, and fresh off a 6-hour-long live broadcast with my gracious host, Grandmaster Joe Benjamin, I'm right here recording the Game of the Day highlight for you guys here on the Internet Chess Club. With the tournament we're dealing with, of course, is the Tata Steel International Grandmaster first Super Duper Jam Tournament of the year. Anand is preparing for his World Championship match. Kramnik, as we were discussing today, doesn't want to share the same playing hall with Vasilin Topalov. But other than these two guys, maybe not enough Russian players, maybe. Oh well. Probably would be nice to see Svidvar or Nepomniachtchi or, well, I don't know, Grishuk in this. But, other than that, excellent, great representation there. Two American players. But the stage belongs to Magnus Carlsen. I mean, we cannot say enough about this man. Young man still, but I believe he elevated his game. Well, he was winning tournaments a couple of years ago already, but now it seems like he's hands down favorite to win any tournament. And today he faced with the leader, Carlsen-Aronian, and number 2 in the rating list. Levon started with 2 wins, and it was a very important game. And let's see how it went. All right, Magnus had white. C4. Now, one thing that I noticed that in the past, maybe 2 years ago or so, Magnus's opening repertoire was yet to take shape. Sometimes he would venture into the kind of stuff that really doesn't suit his style necessarily. Like maybe shaky stuff, too sharp. Too tactical play. Now he established already that he can beat anybody in the world in his style, in this positional play, putting pressure, and the endgame technique and all that. And there is really no need for him to play, to take chances pretty much. So no E4, where I remember was a year and a half ago, so he played Aronian. I forgot what tournament that was. And Magnus went into a scotch and castled long, had no pawns near his king, and then was actually lucky to escape with a draw. He's not going to do this stuff anymore. He knows what he needs. It's very important. It's a sign of maturity, and makes it even tougher to play. Okay, Levon, on the other hand, the Armenian school of chess, so always Queen's Gambit declined. Well, that's his choice. So they got nicked by Nakamura, and but I guess, like the expected opening. So let's see what Magnus prepared. D4, Bishop E7. That's what all Armenian players, they never allow the exchange variation where a white man would play Bishop G5. So this pretty much never happens in their games. I played my share of Armenian players of my generation, and slightly older, slightly younger, starting with Rafael Vaganian and some Battle Puchian and, many others, and then I could never get into this. They all play Bishop E7. Now, the thing is one more word about this. Well, the thing is that white can now take 2 roads after this. And I just want to bring this up to your attention. When it reaches this position. Some players, myself included, they play knight f3 and they castle short and they try for the pawn minority attack. But there is a system with knight e2 followed by f3, which was favorite of Garry Kasparov's. And, Gary played very strongly. Just was very difficult for anybody, even the best player. Karpov, I don't think Karpov ever allowed this. He never wanted to, to see it on the board, So he would always go Bishop E7, just like Aronian did. The reason I brought this up, because Carlsen made an interesting decision of taking the game to approximately same direction, as you will see now. After Bishop E7, this takes Bishop F4. Okay, well, it's all very well known, and usually in this position, as we saw in some recent Nakamura-Aronian game, white does this, g4. Okay, that's a space-grabbing advance pioneered by Mikhail Botvinnik. No, well, Aronian pretty much knows what to do against it, although well, Nakamura was able to get him. So somehow, I don't know, I don't want to draw too much, a conclusion, from this random games that I see, but I think maybe it's time for Aronian to give more variety to his opening repertoire against d4. I think people, they can prepare, and it's not like they get winning positions or anything. It's just they keep Levon, and defending. And Levon is, when he has the initiative and he can do things, he's like no other player in the world. It's just hard to get this kind of stuff on the black side of the Queen's Gambit decline. But anyway, I'm sure Levon was prepared to see that. His whole life, he had to be concerned with this line. But Carlsen did something else. He played Queen c2. And this is a little tricky move. It was played years ago by Kasparov against Karpov. And recently Morozevich, he started playing this stuff, and they had a lot of success this year with that stuff. And well, Carlsen, I see the way, he's going, the direction he's going with his openings. He doesn't want to play any forcing lines, just nothing. Well, would be interesting to see, how he handles, the Slav, and then other stuff. But if there is a position where he can take a step aside from modern theory and still get a playable game, he would. Because he believes in his ability to outplay people, regardless of who they are. That's a sign of maturity and confidence, and that's what makes him very difficult to play against. Alright, so what came here was knight f6, now h3. Now, notice how white takes care of his dark square bishop. In case of e3, it was entirely possible that Aronian would have played knight h5. So h3 came to make sure the bishop's safe. Now g6. This. Alright, I'm no big expert on these positions, but I know that white is thinking of playing g4 still. And I don't know how big a deal that is. I don't really know what black should play here. I would guess he could play this, and if the bishop goes there, then maybe he can play that. But it's just trying to exchange. But but he doesn't know. Black cannot tell which way white's going to be going. White can play g4 with a tempo and then castle long, and he may be gaining time for his attack against the black king. Well, this position cannot be played well without two things. First of all, experience in such structures, and secondly, particular study of this exact position. It's difficult to do. No, Levon played h5. I was debating this with Joel. I mean, our debate was kind of mild. We didn't disagree with one another, but I pointed out that the move h5 obviously stops g4, but still weakens the king side, black's king side. And when bishop d3 was played, which surprised Joel, but I thought white had to do this, because now h5 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Even though, of course, the exchange of the light square bishops should be good for black, and most of Queen's Gambit declined in exchange variation positions. But here I just thought that h5 really sticks out in a kind of unpleasant way. But knight d7, no, well, once again, in retrospect, but But what is there to do? You can play, of course, the move bishop d6, but you don't know. Maybe it's an important defender. At some moment, white can castle long. It's very difficult for black to decide which piece to exchange and which to leave on the board before he knows, which direction white will take the game, depending on the king, here or there. Now, for example, this kind of stuff, even this. So now two things are happening. First of all, there's some sacrifices on g6 possible, and black is a little late bringing his knight to e4, which with the bishops present. And now white will castle long, of course. Like this, castles, and no, he's thinking of playing g4 already. Maybe black should try to castle long too. Well, maybe that's the way to go. I'm just guessing, I really don't know much about this kind of stuff. But anyway, knight d7, and now knight e2, and I think Levon. I'm not sure, Now I'm thinking he probably read, Magnus's intentions wrong. There is nothing wrong in per se, in moving the queenside pawns. It's not like we don't ever consider blacks playing b5 and because of the pawn on c6. It is not the case, but I think the reason Levon, played this so quickly, he wanted to discourage Magnus from castling long. But the Magnus of today is not the Magnus of a couple years ago. He is matured, he's grown up, and he has some, should I call it territory? I don't want to call it rating. It's more than the rating. Image to protect. Well, actually, maybe it would be better off, inviting him to play castles long. So maybe, that could rattle him a little bit, because he seems the most comfortable in positions where he can build up slowly without having to calculate on every move. And as you can see in the way the game went, Magnus only calculated variations when it was necessary and didn't really initiate any tactics throughout the whole game. So maybe a5 was just a little bit too obvious. Although I don't know how much benefit black would get from castling sooner. White's plan is f3 and e4 if he castles this way. Now, how can this be met? Well, one way you can meet this when you play c5. For that, you absolutely don't need your pawn on a5. If I understand that, this is just my idea. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I would even say that if he does this, maybe just play a6. That's what I'm thinking. Now, but c5. For c5, black certainly doesn't need a5, and I think Levon took this out of his options. So I would find this more logical. Now, this is similar to that Kasparov's favorite system, but the light square bishops have gone from the board, and it should benefit black as far as I can tell. Now, white has a number of ways of playing this position. Well, he can even let black take and take back with the pawn. Because then he would have nicely positioned pawn on f3 with the bishop on f4. Well, and the knight on d7 is not so good. Black then would have to somehow bring the knight over to e6. But or he can choose to pressurize the isolated pawn, but then of course he has to deal with some weakness of his own on e3. It's entirely plausible that white should in this position play something like rook d1 and sort of hide his intentions and maybe just make c5 more difficult to play. So this position is really deep, in its content. Anyway, so in my opinion, a5 was a move strictly designed to discourage black from castling long, which in my opinion Magnus was not planning on doing. Okay, since it's not c5, then e4. Okay, one thing here for black that maybe he could allow the pawn to stay on e4 for a while, but he found a particular idea which is sort of logical because the knight gets to come to e6, a good square, but I think it fails to equalize the game. So he took on e4. I don't know really what to suggest. I mean, just push forward. No, I guess he could, but then knight a4 would take that idea out with knight c5. You'll see it later in the game, and white can start his business also on the c file. Well, not sure, how this pans out. What we have here, what not. Well, white also is looking to e5, e6. The pawn on h5 is really not well positioned. The best move for black would be h5, h7, but he can't do that. So, Aronian is also spending a lot of time here and fell behind on the clock very significantly. Only 40 minutes left, while Magnus still had 1 hour and 20 minutes. Here Joel and I, we thought maybe queen e3 was the move, but then Joel said that, it's good for white anyway. I was thinking for a while that b4 might work, but that's really not so good. I mean, its mutual weakness is alright, but the biggest problem is just the position of the black knight on f6, it's just not good. Well, actually, you'll probably correct me, maybe you'll point out that bishop g5 wins a piece right away, or whatever. I mean, the point is, it's just not a good line for black. So, since before wasn't working, then Aronian had to come back to e6, and now Magnus keeps d4 under control. Okay, one look at this position, 18 moves into the game. No, well, white stands better, and significantly so. Look at how black pawns are pointing out. They're all pointing out outward. Well, they should be pointing out inward to strike the white center, but they look in the wrong way, and then it is very difficult. Whatever advances we have in modern chess, but it's very difficult to have a good game when you have no control in the center. And the ease with which Magnus obtained this, it's just, it's just amazing. Now, Magnus was so comfortable with his position that he didn't even feel like that going to a4 was necessary. He figured he had all the time in the world to bring the knight back into play in some better squares. Yeah, black had to go some. I mean, this is an interesting move, playing knight g5, that embarrasses the white queen. But didn't quite work out because that little weakening of the white king never really played a large role in the game. b3. I mean, this move played on move 24, when Levon only had 15 minutes left. It pretty much, signifies, who won the opening battle. White has a large positional advantage. And he's sitting there choosing between, d5 or e5 or... Well, it's very difficult for black to play. Yeah, I was thinking f5. I thought the situation was desperate enough. But probably white would play e5. I mean, there isn't much going on over there, even if you play this and then you bring your knight over there. No, actually, maybe this wouldn't be so bad, if the knight came to e4. At least it stops knight d6. I don't know. I was all for f5 here. To me, it's also in a practical point of view. You get so low on time, you can't afford to play nothing moves anymore. You have to speed things up and get some counterplay going. I guess from that point of view, f5. Well, I think after queen e7, queen g2, this is a great move, stepping away from knight g5. So Magnus doesn't have to do anything special, and they got the number 2 player in the world, firmly on the ropes there. And being low on time and such, Aronian went for a pawn sacrifice. Well, he was able to force white to move the e-pawn forward and give up the white squares, and they set up a nice trap, which Joe and I fell instantly. You're thinking knight c6, but of course queen d7, and now white has 2 guys under attack, the bishop there and the knight on c6. No, in our defense, I tell you, when you have 7 games to cover, and you try to be entertaining, and you talk all the time, and you want to make sure that you don't miss any tells. Only very little part of your brain is actually working chess-wise, So blunders are bound, of course, Anyway, not this. Instead of solid move bishop d2. I thought, black could have some compensation, but he has too many weak points to worry about. And c6, f7, potentially b4. And most importantly, he doesn't have sufficient space. Well, by sufficient space, I mean you have to get your pieces closer. A little closer, so they can do damage to the opponent. Except for the knight on d5, there is nothing. Knight f4, we also thought rook c1 was pretty good. That's a tactical sequence here. No, another blunder. I was advocating the move knight takes before, counting on queen takes and then rook f2. And white indeed is probably winning, because he's attacking the rook on c2. Want to see what I missed? Oh. Nah, that's not good. Now with serious problems for white. Maybe white is lost now. Yeah, but there is no need for white, to go berserk here. He needs to take care, of immediate threats. If he loses the 2 pawns, so be it. Well, he had a solid move, queen e4. That would probably do the trick. I know people were advocating this online, but instead came king h1, which is also pretty good. And now black had to protect b4, and Magnus played d6. Really, at this moment, considering the enormous advantage, on the board and on the clock, I thought this game will finish quick. But, credit goes to Aronian. Now, he put up such a resistance in this game, and you know what? Believe me or not, he almost made it. Queen a8, that's, indeed, things are happening around the black king, he has to go to the endgame. Now, Levon had this, I don't know really what he disliked there in this one. Now, pardon me, rook takes, e8 queen. So that would force this, and now he's a full exchange ahead. I mean, that is, has to be winning, right? Forcing him to the endgame. Alright. E takes f7. It has to be okay too. But here in some strange way, black played rook d6. I know he's down 2 pawns, but somehow he protected g6 and there are the spins. Magnus stood here for a while, spent about 8 minutes, and he played this move, which opens up two possible variations. And Aronian had to choose without having a whole lot of time on the clock. This is the crossroads. He could play King G7. Well, the idea is, of course, to take the F7 pawn and just beat down just one pawn. And now it's interesting that if White plays some kind of lazy move like this, and then Knight F6 comes, and potentially, well, maybe Knight F4 check, then because this B4 pawn somehow holds too, Black gets, well, some chances to make a draw. White really needs to, to get sort of hands-on, on the situation, get a good grip and immediately, win the B4 pawn. The right move is Knight D5. That prevents Knight F6, pardon me, on account of Bishop B2, which is important. And when Black takes, now comes that. And now you do this, and now Bishop takes. No, well, I don't know. I looked at this. But the problem with this position is that Black really has no future. Even if he somehow stops these two connected pawns with his knight, he's going to end up probably in Zugzwang. And he plays G5 and whatever. He plays G4. Nobody's going to exchange. White for sure is playing H4 here. And then the knight's going to end up on A8 or somewhere. And then the white king, of course, will come around and take H5 one way or another. All these positions are easily winning for the side with the bishop, or if you wish, for the side with the extra pawn. But having a bishop against a knight on A6 certainly helps. No, well, I don't know. And this minor piece endgame. What else to do? Okay, this is a trick because of the fork. But, I mean, how tricky is this? The knight's arrested. No. Resignable position, of course. There is just nothing to do here. So, Levon, he made the right decision. So he took the rook. Now he had to part with the knight, not to get mated. So, I mean, this is pretty, of course, but no, well, Black didn't have to allow this. So he cleared the H7 square, and now this. Well, okay, I'm not sure here. They passed the time control, and I think Magnus played the next couple of moves a little bit too quickly. He probably expected resignation in short order, but, well, as we were talking, Joe and I, rook can do wonders in the endgame. So going the way Magnus took the game, winning that bishop quickly for the f-pawn, maybe was not the best. What White needed to do in order to make the result in that game winning, in a secure fashion, is to play h4. But maybe the right way to start is this. There's really no problem with losing the a2 pawn. The white king, can always come to f4. It is important to secure the king side. So I was just thinking of, this kind of stuff. And now, of course, you can do that. No, but I'm not sure, because here it's pretty much the same thing. I'm not sure how to do this, but no, it just seemed to me maybe White could have somehow kept more pawns on the board on the king side, but, well, it didn't happen, and surprisingly, this was played now, f8. Surprisingly, Levon got some chances here. He played a very good move, g5. Notice that rook d2 and takes pawn is not as important as getting the king out of that cage and preventing white from securing the king side completely. Well, Magnus is not giving up, so he did what he was supposed to do. And then, since other games were over, we spent a lot of time looking at this position, and after rook d3. And after a while, we found this not such a simple win as it seemed. And so did Magnus, because he spent 20 minutes here and finally played knight c6. I was not sure that would be the best move, but can't argue with success. Now, the bishop is going there not exactly with the idea of necessarily taking the pawn. White is looking for ways to secure the h4 pawn and sort of anchor his bishop over there on g5. But he has to go around in order to reach there. Obviously, he had to be careful and not to do some stupid things like this. So, bishop d6. Well, we looked at other things, I don't think that Black could have significantly improved his play. Other moves were possible, but king d4 now, this is a very important move. In many variations, Black was able to come around with the rook from h1 and then to h3, getting to the b3 pawn. The essence of the position is such that White would like to keep the h4 pawn on the board and win the b4 pawn. And then, he would have all the time in the world to slowly advance the b pawn and eventually win the rook. But there was another side to this coin, the one that I didn't appreciate until my partner Joe brought it to my attention. That in some variations, Black is actually okay with giving up. White is actually okay with giving up the h4 pawn, but he needs to keep his king in the center and advance the b pawn quickly. So that way he keeps the black king, obviously, from running back to the defense and wins the rook without allowing black to make too much happening with the h pawn. But in order to do this, you have to look at all those ideas, That was an interesting move. Okay, king f5. What we looked at was this. Check. Here. Now, there. And the move rook e3, recommended by another grandmaster who participated in our analysis, the esteemed Jonathan Spielman of England. So the black rook controls e7 and it wants to go to e4. But as Joe pointed out, it's all right. Now we'll see many similar positions, and then they all have one thing in common, that eventually Black's gonna have to give up the rook, and he just can't push his h pawn far enough. White regains the coordination of his pieces and stops the pawn on h3, as you will see later in the game. But there was another line, that people were telling me it might work, some kind of sacrifice on g5. But I guess that would work if White went different way. Yeah, then it becomes interesting. Like Spielman told us, that this position is a draw. Now, somebody's going to have to check it because the calculations, but I just tell you what the idea is. The idea is for Black is to use his king to attack the knight. The white knight will be able to stop the h pawn, but then Black is trying to use the king to perpetually attack the knight, and under threat of h-pawn promoting, the white would have to repeat the moves. If it works, great, but at least that's what John told us. Yeah, but this was all, it was unnecessary, because the line that we saw with knight d4. So Levon played king f5. I guess, he realized that there was no way out, but still, he soldiered on, like a truly great player should, and just played till the end. Yeah, this trick, controls e7 and allows black to win the h4 pawn. But by that time we realized that Magnus's line of thinking was going along what Joel was thinking about. So Joel was thinking, okay, I'll give up the h4 pawn. So he advocated this move, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not make a draw here. Well, that pawn goes forward, and I could never get anything going with the h-pawn. But I guess it was a matter of choice. Knight c6, well, I guess works too. Another move that was probably winning the game was this. But there is something that could make you nervous, like these things with rook d1 and rook takes d6. I don't know. I guess knight d4 is good enough. Keep the knight closer. Well, interesting. So the king on c7. Well, obviously, no, that's creating shelter for the king. So now in this line, black does draw the white knight away from the h-pawn, but at the same time he has to lose time coming back to b1. Okay, let me show you this variation. This is not what happened in the game. Now, if you think that this is competitive and maybe black can make things happen, then there is this check. Going to g2, obviously not good, because then, well, the white king could have been anywhere. It's not the question of the king being close enough. The bigger problem for black that he cannot do anything anymore. Even if the white king is somewhere in the parking lot, eventually will make it back on the board, and capture the h-pawn. Well, those of you who are curious, if Carlsen knew how to checkmate with bishop and knight, I'm positive, there is not a whole lot of mystery there. We discussed that possibility, but no, I don't think that Aronian was looking forward to playing it out. So the game ended somewhat differently. Now, interesting. That's why. Look why Magnus kept his knight on d4. Look at this position. The black king can no longer get through. There was another nice point to that knight d4. If black does, instead of h4, if black does this, trying to upset the coordination of black pieces, then comes that, and guess what? White's gonna make a queen. Well, nice piece of calculation, but of course it's a piece of cake for world's #1 player. I got to this point, and now comes one last move that is essentially important. Don't be in a hurry to win the rook. It's not going anywhere. Most important is this. Well, nothing else to do, because the king gets pushed out. You need to support h2, but if you come here, then, of course, later h2 will be answered with knight f3 check. Or, oh well, this doesn't seem to help a whole lot. Well, white can win even with the king move, because your next is going to be king g1, walking right into this. Alright, so the endgame, well, good work in the endgame, and I'm good important victory for Magnus. I think, in a larger scheme of things, well, this game, gave me a better idea what kind of player Magnus Carlsen is now, and well, I hope that the rest of the participants in this tournament will take notice that it's probably not a good idea to compete with Magnus in this kind of positional play, particularly from a position of disadvantage. If you're white, then I guess you can do what Ivanchuk did, but that would be a draw. How to beat Magnus Carlsen? That's the problem, for the for the rest of the crowd. Okay, they have 10 more games, to figure it out. In the meantime, Aronian should not be very upset because he's still in a good position. Although, he had a chance to creep much closer, rating-wise, to Magnus, and now the margin is 10 points larger. But, Levon is an optimist. I'm sure he'll come back and will give us a lot of good games. Among other games that ended decisively today, I would mention Rajabov's first win. He defeated Navarra, who pretty much self-destructed out of the opening. And somewhat surprising win by Karyakin, who was the victim of a bad start, 0-2. But today he defeated young Anish Giri, who I think, who played enterprising, very interesting way he played an opening, but possibly beat a little bit more than he could chew, at least at that stage. Alright, so that finishes my roundup of the round 3 there in YKNZ. This was Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. Well, I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hi there, you ICC fans. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. And you have been listening to a game of the day from the 2012 Tata Steel chess tournament in YKNZ. And now comes the new in chess trivia question, where each day during the tournament, one lucky ICC member can win a 1-year subscription to the award-winning Dutch magazine New in Chess. All you have to do is listen carefully to the following question and send your answer by email to us at trivia@chessclub.com. Please remember to also include your postal address. Entries will be open until 1 hour into the next day's play, and the first randomly drawn correct answer will be announced in channel 165, midway through each round of our live chess.fm broadcast of the Tata Steel chess tournament. And here is today's New in Chess trivia main prize question. What year did the Hog Ovens tournament first become an international tournament?